Now, Heather, you can lead us
Yep.
in the pledge. This is backwards. I don't know which way to hold. No, that's it. Okay.
Very good. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all. Thank you. All right. The next item, citizens' comments. Oh, Kristen needs to be unmuted also. Kristen Schultz. Okay. Do we have any citizens' comments? Whoop. She muted herself. That's okay. I don't know. Those of you who know how to work Zoom can raise the hand, the little hand. I'll recognize you. Those of you who want to just wave your own hand in front, or a lot of you have blacked out your thing. So do I have any citizens' comments at this point from the Zoom audience here? Hearing none, then we'll move on to educational update. I will hand that over to Melinda, Superintendent Smith.
Do you want to go right into the budget? I don't really have an update except that we had a snow day today, and tomorrow we're looking at possible delay, but we don't know at this time. I can go right into the budget if you'd like, Chairman Heather.
All right. Okay. Well, let's get it. Let's jump right into the budget, which I guess I'll turn over to Mr. Steglitz then.
Well, actually,
you want to start?
Yeah, I do want to start. Thank you.
Okay.
Bill and I and all of the directors and principals put together a budget that reflects a 4.7% increase over last year. For a total of $21,571,944. That is an increase of $967,570. Yep. The budget that you have before you went through a very tight screening process between Bill and myself and the directors and principals. We pushed all of the staffing requests forward. You'll see in the budget that there are restoring 2 of the paraprofessionals for the kindergarten classrooms that we had to reduce last year. We do plan on adding reading teachers and a special ed teacher, reading teacher to restore the one that was reduced last year, and a special ed teacher. However, we're going to try to put those on our grants, Alliance and IDEA specifically. And then now I'm going to turn it to Bill so that he can talk about the fixed costs and the increases by department. But I want to say that the budget before you reflects what came from the schools, except for some of the reductions that Bill and I went through that doesn't really have a major impact overall on the budget. But we did go through, and obviously that's part of our process to remove some items we don't think should go forward. So now I'm going to turn it to Bill so he can talk about by department and the increases.
Okay.
Thanks, Melinda. Hi, Heather. I noticed your hands up. Did you have a question?
I just have a quick question. Do we have a copy of the budget? Is it online or did we get an email? Because I couldn't find it if it was sent.
Yes, okay. I emailed it with my update last Friday. So you should have those budgets.
Let me find it. Thank you.
Bill's going to work off a different template, so right. I think he's going to be sharing his screen.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
Heather, you probably don't need to go digging. I'll put the I'll start off.
Yeah, I found it. I found it.
Great.
Anyway, yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Please.
Can everyone see the cover
yeah.
sheet to the budget on a department level? We're all set. Okay, great. So as Melinda mentioned, we did take a fine-tooth comb to the budget. We put forward all the staffing requests that everybody had asked, and we come in at a I guess, a moderate request compared to where we were at last year. If you recall, we started off at I think a $1.9 million request last year. And this year we're at 967,570, a 4.7% increase. This increase really relates to a few primary drivers. The story behind this budget is actually fairly simple and straightforward. As you'll see in the right-hand column of this presentation, it gives a brief synopsis of what's driving the change at each of the school's departments, but you'll see some common themes. It's really all about contractual salary increases across all of the schools, because remember, we have a new teacher's contract for next year. We have a new administrator's contract in place. And we have assumed, I believe it was 2.25 or 3% increases for the remaining folks. We have budgeted for health insurance at an increase of 8%. Originally, when we started to work on this, we were looking at about 10%. The most recent range we have from the insurance brokers are 7 to 8%. So I've gone with the high end of that range. That, as you all know, is subject to change in the future. I'll be in touch with Michelle throughout the budget process, and as we hear new information from the insurers, that'll be updated. But I think 8% is at least a good place to start for right now. As Melinda mentioned, addition of the salary increase lines do include the 2 new kindergarten para positions in the elementary school. The other 2 new positions hopefully will be grant funded, so those don't affect the BOE budget from the start. In the high school, we also have the addition of the culinary program that obviously is driving some of the increase. And as we go through the other lines, pupil services and transportation obviously were impacted by the contractual increase with DATCO of 5%. The good news there is that we were able to lock in some pretty favorable fuel pricing for next year. And that has taken a little bit of the sting out of the transportation increase. If you look at the transportation line there, line 15, it's showing only a $38,000 increase. That's because it's knocked down by about $16,000 or $17,000 because of savings on gas and diesel due to the new agreement for the next year. So that was one of the few bright areas. Moving a little further down the analysis in the technology line, we do have some technology that, frankly, we're to the point now where we need quite a few replacement Chromebooks, laptops, and then there's some network access points that go in. That's probably one of the bigger big ticket items increases across the whole budget, and it's really I don't think we have a lot of room to negotiate on that one, because some of those Chromebooks, if I remember correctly, Heather had mentioned that these go back to some of the original Chromebooks that were sourced as part of with COVID money during the pandemic. So those, as you would imagine, are down to their dying breaths at this point. That really takes you through the budget at a high level. I've included, and hopefully if you see it, Heather, the detail sheet behind this that goes down to an account level to give you a closer look on some of those accounts if you'd like. The separate analysis that Melinda mentioned is this look. What I've done here is tried to quantify for you how those main drivers break down across each of the departments. So this goes in order of magnitude, with the elementary school having the larger increase, scrolling down through, and you'll see in column F here, the increases get smaller as we get down to that total of $967,000 at the bottom. So starting at the top in the elementary school, and keep in mind when we talk about salary increases, it's not simply the step changes that folks are seeing that are impacting this line. Some folks could have come off grants. There could have been vacant positions that were added. So it's not quite as straightforward as a straight salary increase. But in the elementary school, $174,000. The health insurance impact was $118,000. Here's the addition of your 2 paraprofessionals at $54,000. Keep in mind that this is salary only. We have budgeted for these positions and for the other 2 positions that are hopefully going to be grant funded. We've budgeted the benefit impact of those in the health insurance lines across each of the departments. You'll see an other thrown in here. I try to keep that pretty small, and basically it just makes this number agree to your sheet up front. But it's a combination of a bunch of minor puts and takes outside of the primary drivers. Over in pupil services, salary increase was a big piece of it. Health insurance, a smaller piece. Once again, the salary increases. There are a couple of different things going there. It's not straight salary. There is a transportation impact in pupil services, the other line that we talked about, but we do have a few reductions that we made in pupil services this time around. We reduced outplacements by $100,000, and that was based on a review of the current outplacements that we have and hoping that we can maintain that position into 2025. So we went from, I believe it was $1.3 million to $1.2 million on outplacements. The pupil services numbers also include us using roughly half of what we expect for special ed excess costs next year of $80,000. That's what you see there. Moving to the high school, health insurance $144,000, salary increases of $42,000. The addition of the culinary program boils down to $25,000. That's food cost and things of the like. And then another of $11,165. Going over to technology, this breaks down the $97,000 that we talked about earlier across laptops, Chromebooks, and access points and switches. Moving to Bill Birch's shop, salary increases, health insurance, similar to what we've seen above. He also saw some increases in electric and repairs and maintenance. And then once again, similar to in transportation, also locking in a few months ago on fuel, we see a significant savings on heating oil of $53,000. So that's another nice savings that's helping us sort of meet our broader budget goals. In middle school, similar as to above, contractual salary increases. This health insurance number, frankly, I need to look into a little bit more deeply because they're showing a decrease, and I think it may be a change of the type of coverage that folks are taking within the middle school, but ultimately there was a bit of a dip there. I also saw a reduced ask in some supplies in middle school. And I think part of what's driving this is I actually had reached out to both the middle school and the elementary school late in the process, because all of you may remember some discussions we had about FOSS science kits in the past and where they were budgeted, whether they were budgeted in curriculum or out in the schools. Well, Melinda had made the decision last year that these would be budgeted in the schools, and I remember them being a significant cost. I didn't see them, so I started poking around and asking questions, and sure enough, they are ordered. But the cost of what it looks like to me, and maybe the principals can back me up on this or tell me that I'm barking up the wrong tree. What it looks like is now that we've used these kits for a few years, it appears that the teachers have really zoomed in on what they like, and they're targeting their ordering better. So I think that's a big part of what's driving the reduced supplies. Transportation, I feel like I've talked about it 10 times, but there's the DATCO increase and there's the offset on the fuel. District-wide has some interesting things going on. You've got health insurance going up, of course, but you also have, this is sort of where Melinda and I sharpened the pencil a little bit, and we took a look at lines like severance, unemployment, and longevity, for example, and we took a hard look at what we'd budgeted in the past versus what we've spent, because we were looking for some savings, and the combined effect of those reductions across those different lines gets us to that $92,000 cut in district-wide expenses. This keeps Melinda's curriculum development lines are also in district wide. And I'd like to mention that just like a lot of the schools and across the athletic programs, the budgets in the curriculum line are essentially exactly the same as last year. So obviously that reflects a little bit of a tightening of the belt. So hopefully you found that little kind of higher level spin through the budget and then a little bit more detail with this presentation to give you a good idea of exactly how we got to this $967,000 increase from one year's budget to the next. If I'm happy to answer questions, or if we'd like to talk a little bit more about sort of the approach, you can take it away, guys. Let me have it.
Okay, I went and did a little research, and I don't know that it applies to us, but inflation, the average wage increase according to the U.S. Labor Board of Statistics, and I'm not saying, I kind of would like to see all the labor cost, all our, we can run a Munis report by, I think it's object code or something,
Yes.
by all the salaries combined. Because the U.S. Board of Statistics said that the average wage increase for 2023 was 4.4%. And I want to see if we fall within that parameter. So we would have to back out, we don't have to back out the reading teacher or the special ed teachers because they are grant funded and they don't show up in the budget, but it would be the two paras and any teachers that we are bringing in for the special ed. No, that's in there. Yeah, that's a question. Why did special ed salary go up so much?
So some of that.
Oh, no, that only went up 4%. That's fine. It's the para salary, but we're hiring more paras in special ed.
Correct. There's two paras. But Kathleen, those two paras actually affect gen ed, if I remember right, Melinda. Those two are in kindergarten.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. It's kindergarten, not special education.
Well, I got it under pupil services on line 168. Oh, I see. We had it budgeted in 2024. We only spent 24,000. We had it budgeted, but we didn't. You're budgeting. In 2024, we budgeted for 66,000. We didn't spend that money. So you're re-budgeting to spend the 66,000.
I think you're off a column there, Kathleen.
Let me see. 168.
Yep.
All right.
It looks like we had a budget of.
Budget is 69.
Yep.
The 24 budget was 3,000.
Right.
So we're going to spend.
We were on track to spend.
24,000. So why are we budgeting 69 or 70,000?
Because that is how the way the salaries were calculated. We took the current roster of paras, for example, that were coded into special ed, and we grew their salaries at the expected raise. And that is the amount that shows up in that line when you go through that exercise. So I'm wondering if maybe we had some open positions that we didn't budget last year that we filled during the year.
Maybe because you're only projected to spend 25,000 this year.
Right,
But you're saying that during the year you filled positions.
right.
Okay.
But
'Cause
that's only,
that's an increase of 2,000%.
Right.
It's huge.
so, but that is only the high school, isn't it?
Yes.
168.
School special ed, yes.
Yeah, if you look also under pupil services for the middle school and the elementary school under the paras, whatever line they are, they also have pretty significant jumps. All the paras in all three schools
Right,
under pupil services.
yeah.
And
So-
some of that is affected by this year's contract negotiation on the para side includes a higher than what you would expect to see increase, because on some of those folks, the increase, believe it or not, had to be higher than would normally be expected to get them up to the upcoming minimum wage level.
Well, that I understand because I was in the negotiations, but I mean, we're almost doubling what we budgeted for last year. I'd like to look at that.
Sure, definitely.
I think you're wrong. I just would
No,
like
no, that's fine.
explanation of this.
No, believe me, I appreciate all of you lending a second set of eyes to this,
No,
because
no,
there's a lot of moving parts to this.
Oh, yeah, I understand. But it's just for my own peace of mind. I'd really like some explanation because if we hired people mid-year, or if I understand the minimum wage thing went up tremendously. And we negotiated some, I don't forgot the exact percentage, but a decent raise for them, and we combined steps. But this is like, these are big, the para's salaries are really going up quite a bit.
Well, Bill, we can go back through and make sure that we have the right paras coded to each one. I know we went through that exercise.
Right.
But we do have some positions that have been filled, and that might be throwing that number off.
Right.
Yeah, just for peace of mind. Those are the ones that really jumped out at me. But I'd like to see that spreadsheet by object code.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. I can definitely generate that.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we negotiated a lot of our contracts back when the inflation was at a higher rate, and we negotiate our contract at the beginning of the early on in the cycle of negotiations. But as of the end of the year, which I'm sure that everybody's going to jump on the Board of Finance, the inflation rate was 3.4%. And we're looking at a 4.7% increase. So we got to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that we have justification for every single one of these increases.
Right.
And the mill rate is 744,000 thereabouts.
Yes, it's 1 mil, and this is per discussion with Paul Hopkins, our assessor.
Mm-hmm.
He expects 1 mil to be equivalent to $771,000. Now, what's unfortunate there is that that is about a $3,000 increase from last year. So we got very little help from appreciation. And I questioned him quite a bit on that. And what he was saying was that it kind of reflects what he's noticed over probably the last 4 to 6 months, and that values seem to be leveling off, not dropping yet, but the rate of appreciation seems to be leveling off.
Okay.
Because it was, as part of this exercise, I was very hopeful that I was going to see a sharper increase in that number, and it was almost nothing.
Okay.
That just like the insurance rate is something that I'll be touching base with Paul on. Matter of fact, I did it today just to make sure I couldn't get a little extra help out of that, but unfortunately it didn't change at all.
Okay. And if you could send us that first page, that split between the schools, you know, all the first worksheet that you showed us, the breakout, the high school, what is driving the increase?
Yeah.
This one, Kathleen?
Yes,
Okay.
that helps a lot. So that when I get the other by object code, and then by object code by school, that would really help. Or by department, or whatever you want to call it. And do we have any capital projects that we're going to put in? And Bill Birch is going to make up a list of his in-house projects and his capital projects.
Yep,
Yeah.
we talked through that with Bill, and we have resubmitted to the town for the, you guys will remember from last year, the high school hallway and locker painting project that was ultimately cut.
Okay.
We did add that to the capital sheet on the town side.
Okay. Anything else we're adding to the town site that needs to?
Well, one thing I would like to mention that we should all, I think we should all keep in mind as we head down this whole process. This year we had no budget impact in fiscal 24. We had no budget impact in there for the referendum items. There will be some level of debt service. I'm still in the process of calculating that related to HVAC, track, and school security. That will hit the debt service line on the town side. Obviously those things are school related, but that's a budget constraint on that side too.
Okay, that's fair. If we get the grant for the HVAC.
Right. I have been in touch with bond counsel and our advisors, and they wanted to get an update from me towards the end of January. Because I think if I remember right, Melinda, that's when probably the earliest we could hear on HVAC would be the end of January.
Oh, no, not till March.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. So then they were surprised that I was reaching out already, but I'd rather try to have that as teed up as we could. When we let's be positive when we get that grant. We'll see.
Okay. Do any of the other board members have any questions or any concerns on line items of the budget?
Or any other proposed analyses you'd like to see pulled together?
I wouldn't mind. I don't know if the hyperlink stuff is ready to see how that looks.
What we're going to end up doing is giving you it won't be hyperlinked to this. I think correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the other districts had that on their website where you could click on the link and it would bring you over. What we'll be able to do in relatively short order, we have it completed where you have the object code and the definition of the object code, and we were going to order the object codes numerically, so that if you had an object code that you wanted to look up the definition on, you could simply flip to that, to that page. The hyperlinking I believe it's going to be something that ultimately will be the website presentation. But if that's not consistent with what you had seen, we can talk
So,
about that a little bit.
yeah, so like other districts where when they put out their budget presentation, like we normally put out this giant massive spreadsheet that everybody hates the way that it looks because they don't understand it. And the way that other districts do it is all of those line item numbers are a blue hyperlink. You click it, it gives you the
Right.
definition of what that is, and then what's driving that particular change for those line items.
There's one subtle difference in and I guess we can discuss it with the whole board, that the examples of that I've seen, we have a historical practice of showing the budget by school, and those objects cut across the schools. And I'm getting a little wonky accounting talk here. The examples from other districts that I've seen, they show the district in total.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be, a teacher salary object that would include all the teacher salaries from all the schools. And that's what's hyperlinked. So
Right.
we parse it out a little finer. So it complicates that presentation a little bit.
We didn't plan on actually posting that bill until March, right? When we get closer to the town meeting.
That was my understanding. If that's different from the boards, we're pretty close to having the actual document, so you could see because you can do it very quickly in Word or in Excel, and that work's already been done. The hyperlinking is a process that we're still working through rather, but you would have that available. So for each one of those objects, you could just go and look and see the definition.
But why wouldn't it be okay to do it by the object code?
It would be okay. What I'm saying is, let's say someone's looking at a line item that says high school teacher salaries, and they click on that object code, and it would just bring them to the definition of that object code, which would be all teacher salaries.
Right, but I'm saying put out the budget in detail, but then if they want, put out one by object code only, like all the teacher
Yep,
salaries.
we could
If
add
that's
that
the
separate
hyperlink.
look.
If that's what
and
the other
then-
schools are doing,
Yep.
then that's what we should hyperlink. Jess,
I'm pulling up one of those other district reports now.
okay, because
So,
I'd have
yeah.
to pull up one of those. If that's what they're doing, then that's what we can do too.
Sure.
I mean, we just should mimic that. Because they want to see what's driving, not the definition so much, but what is driving.
Right.
Well, similar to the program that Amy uses for the budget. She has the little notes on the side.
Yep. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's what inspired the explanation of changes over here, because that's what you're going can you guys see that now? Oh, hold on. Sorry.
No.
Didn't click share. That's what really it kind of inspired this.
But if we did that by object code,
Right. Then you would see that, contracted salary next to all
Right.
of the salary lines.
yeah, and then plunk in a number.
Right. Yeah, well, you're right. It would be the flux amount for
Right.
for that particular object.
Right. Well, I don't know if you're going to do this on an Excel spreadsheet or if you're going to do this through Munis. It wouldn't have that change of number, would it?
No, it would end up being in Excel.
Yeah, okay.
Because interestingly enough, a little off topic, but we've actually on the town moved away from the use of ClearGov, because that unfortunately it was prohibitively expensive,
Okay.
and the bang for your buck was pretty low.
Oh, but it did have that great notes feature.
Right. And so basically I've I've done something similar to the explanation of changes and a note field in the templates that we're using on the town side too. Because another thing that helps that, having that history from budget year to budget year is extremely helpful. Because let's face it, people only do a budget typically once a year, and it's always a challenge to remember what you put in any given account.
Yeah, well, Excel has a note feature.
Right.
So I just have a clarification just to make sure I understand. So like if I'm looking at line 107,
Yep.
Middle school admin salary. So this is one of the things that on social media that people would blow up about, because they would see $252,000 middle school admin salary. Now we know that that's multiple people.
Right.
They assume it's one person's salary, right? And that's where they go bananas, you know? So I don't know, like, much like the town one, is what you're suggesting for our hyperlink, if someone were to click on the middle school admin salary, either the account description or the object code or the amount, will it say 4 FTEs or whatever the heck it is, so that people know that this is not one individual's salary, that this is a multitude of individuals, you know?
So just, sorry to be popping in and out of screen share all the time, but just to try to illustrate the point a little bit. So I just sorted that page on that object code.
Yeah.
So there's the one you mentioned right there, Heather, the middle school admin salaries. So if we were to present this consolidated by object code, you would see a total of 682,167 for object code 50102. So what that definition would have to include is to say it includes the principal at the high school, the principal and the assistant principal in the middle school, which is why they're so much higher, because there's 2. The principal in the elementary school, and then the special ed director. So that's the level. Is that the level of detail you're looking to go into? I guess what I'm getting at is they would see all of this rolled together if we present on an object code level. And then
what I was hoping to see is if they literally clicked on MS admin salary, that a little bloop thing pops up or something that just says 2 people.
Right. So
or something to that
and I
effect.
believe me, I understand what you're getting at. But that distinction is the distinction between defining this object or defining every single account.
I mean, I know what people are obviously looking at, the big ticket items, you know, they're looking at, when it just says $1.4 million for general ed's salaries, you know, for the elementary school, line item 142, you know, like that's the kind of stuff that people are going to look at. They're going to look at the big ticket items and they're going to want to know, what is that, you know? I don't know that they're going to go after the $3,000, you know, this and that's, you know, but I think all the big ticket items, if there's any way that we can somehow, whether it's a little, you know, like I just said, 4 full-time employees or whatever it is, you know, like just something, because I think the folks that look at this, that's what they're zeroing in on, either things that are really changed from year to year, big ticket changes, or big ticket items, you know. And I think that would ease a lot of people's concerns.
Sure.
Jess is next.
So I'm sorry, Jess, go ahead.
So the other district that I'm looking at that I referenced multiple times on this, they do theirs by object code.
Right.
They don't currently put in like the number of FTEs for whatever, but we know that that's what people want to see because they want to be able to divide it by that number and see if their salary is appropriate for the position or what they deem as appropriate. And we all know some people have.
What I've noticed in the examples that I've seen is that the object code definitions appear to be written at a level where they would probably survive from year to year. They're general enough to say, like, for example, what Heather just mentioned about the way there's a little distinction in the way I think at the elementary school and middle school, the general instructional salaries are all lumped in one account. Whereas if you look at the high school accounts, you actually have high school history and high school science, but in the other schools they're all in one. So the definition for that general instructional salary account at the elementary and the high school would literally be, 4 math teachers, 3 science teachers. You'd be going down to that level of detail. But Heather, if we could agree, I'm just trying to think of the way to kind of get to what you're trying to satisfy. If we could set a scope to put a little bit of a definition around big ticket item, and then we could ensure that we go down to that level of detail on those big ticket items in that object code definition.
Right. I really think that people, when they see these big lump sums, that they think that we're hiding something, that we've buried in stuff in there that isn't what it truly is. And obviously that is not the case. And I think the more transparent we are on the big ticket items or the major change in year to year items, the more comfortable maybe people will feel with the number.
We can definitely get at that level of detail. I'd prefer not to share we get into a little too much of the sausage making on this particular look, but just to give people an understanding, the salary lines that are in the budget are actually built off of the actual payroll rosters. So we actually have every single teacher listed, the account that they're coded to. We had their 2024 salary. We reviewed the new teacher contract to determine how people moved on step and populated it with their new salary. And that's what is pulled by the budget model to roll up into the salary lines. So we can identify that. I'd rather not put that up on the screen because it has people's names and everything in it. But that, just so you know, to give you a little level of comfort, that is what's backing up what we're seeing on the screen. Oh, Justin, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was raising my hand and waiting to be called on.
Right,
sorry.
there you go.
Is there any way, Bill, that we could do it by number of people per object code?
Yes.
Right, the object code has the salary. So if we put the number of people by object code, that would kind of satisfy, Heather, I think that would satisfy what you're looking for as well, right?
Could potentially, yeah. I mean, I think just to give one little morsel of additional detail, especially on large salaries or on large line items, just so that we can say, oh, this supplies one is big because we had to buy textbooks for the entire 4th grade. You know what I mean? Like, just a reason behind it,
I think ones like those we're going to have to do on an individual basis, or work with Bill on an individual basis. But I think in terms of the salary one, like Bill, the object code that you just brought up with the administrators, right? We know that's a total of 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Right. So it's 6 people or 5 people or whatever it is. That way somebody can look at it and go, oh, okay, the high school administrator or the middle school administrator is not getting paid $252,000. There's 2 of them. So
Right.
But we can if we do it by object code, it'll make that easier. It also allows for that flexibility to say, nobody's getting their salary specifically called out.
Right. Yeah, and we can add the number of people I mean, it makes sense to put it in that, while we're defining these object codes to have
Mhm.
that as one of the attributes of the definition.
I think that would help.
Tom?
Hey, Bill,
Yep.
just reiterate, all of the budgets have been prepared, so each of the schools are their own cost centers, correct?
Right.
So how does that apply for those that have roles that cover multiple schools? How is that accounted for on the budget this year?
It's typically, it's relatively clean, that folks are in one school or another.
Okay.
If there's some overlap, they typically land, 100% in the school that they spend most of their time in. But it's usually, it's pretty clean. And I wonder if some of the folks you're thinking of, are in pupil services that cut across the schools, and they actually they land in pupil services in Chris Jones's department.
Okay, yeah, that's primarily one of the ones that I was thinking, but
Yeah.
again, this is going back to, I think what you said is trying to create that clean budget, so each
Yep.
school operates under their own, let's say, budgetary constraints.
Right.
Cost centers, any expenses, liabilities, whatever, are all put under that same segment.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's pretty similar to what we did last year too, right? So this is kind of we're not looking at a new budget process where, we have to reacclimate.
No, if we published a budget by object code, which is simply a different sort of the current spreadsheet,
Yep.
that would be a new way to present it.
Okay.
Because to your point, object codes, there are teacher salaries in all of the schools, so that's why it's sort of a little bit of a preference of how if you just want to think of Thompson Public Schools in its entirety, or do you want to look at the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, which I think is historically what we've done.
Yeah, and again, and I'm not going to hog this, but I believe this is what we were asked, and Kathleen, correct me on this, but I think that's what the Board of Finance was looking for, was more structure on the cost centers. So they could really fine tune where the expenses were coming from if there was an exorbitant fee. Am I correct?
This is traditionally what we've given them,
Mhm.
is the way by school.
Yep.
And then the total recap. But what I'm asking for is by object code.
Yep.
So I can see the percentage increase in total salaries, total insurance, total, which you've done sort of on that
Right.
change in accounts, but you
Right.
haven't sorted, you didn't give me the budget from this year and the proposed this year to
Right.
give me the percentage. You gave me the change in number, but you didn't give me the percentage change.
Yep. No, that's fair. Yeah, it's
And
just
you
a
didn't
it's a
cap it.
different view of the same data.
Yeah. It's the same data. It's not going to
Yep.
change the data, but I'd like to see, okay, total salaries went up X amount, which will show in the presentation most likely.
Yep.
But I'd have to calculate that myself.
Where you run into a little bit of trouble is like when we talked about earlier, is if there's new people in there or people move from school to school. A lot of times people say, okay, the teachers roughly got 3 or 4% a year. And then if they look at this at a metric like that and it's higher or lower, it's probably driven by additional butts and seats, as one of my old bosses used to say.
But if we took your first spreadsheet where you
Yep.
gave me the changes in number and there are some people added, and you showed those people added.
Right. You can pull that out. Right.
Yeah. If you added the budget our proposed budget, the budget from last year, there's the change in the dollars, and then you calculated percentage. That's
Right.
really what I'm looking for.
Right. Sure.
Hmm.
That can be created.
Yeah, I just don't want to add too much busy work, because if, Munis kind of does it, but you haven't plugged in. Well, I don't want to add too much busy work, that's all.
No, I can turn it around, and you can get a look at it, for our next meeting, and hopefully it gets you where you need to be.
Yeah, because then we have two different views of the same numbers, and then we can look at it.
Right. Tom?
Kathleen, I don't know if this is appropriate or not. I see that there's a couple of Board of Finance members on here tonight, which is very appreciative. Should we ask for their input to see if this is the right structure or if there's any suggestions from them?
Why don't we wait till next meeting when we have a different format?
Okay, fair enough.
Hi, Steve.
Well,
Steve, just remember, you do have to live with her. I do not. So I tried for you, buddy. Next meeting.
I'd really like to talk about it this meeting, though. Okay.
You want to talk about it? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Don't mind.
Take
I
mine.
had a couple comments on sort of on the formatting thing. Heather's got great points about people are going to want to know, why whatever number it is so big. But I think there's a couple things to look at. One is the absolute dollars. Absolutely right on that, Heather. The other part is the percentages. Sometimes even small numbers, giant percentages will get a question asked. Not that it's wrong one way or the other, but that will also be to some degree, you'll get some focus of interest on those kinds of things. When something goes up 2,000%, even if it's just a few dollars, people will typically kind of wonder about that. The other format suggestion I might have is the changes you show here, Bill, are versus budget. I've always found it more useful to compare it to expected or anticipated, projected, I think is what you call it, spending. That to me is a much more, the versus budget is interesting, but personally I find it versus expected, the change versus the expected current year spending to be more useful in trying to understand what's happening. Just because you budgeted something very high or very low for the current year doesn't mean that next year's number, whether you think it's high or low, is right or wrong. But compared to the current year, I think that for me, that's a more meaningful comparison. Then maybe a little bit more specifically, and Kathleen, you talked about the paras in pupil services. And Bill, if you could put that up, I'll kind of talk over that if I could.
Sure.
You talked about line 168, which was going up $66,000, and I think we had some questions about that. But if I also noticed, and I didn't notice it until tonight, line 173 is para salaries up 148%, $194,000, and line 170,
180.
what 180?
Yeah.
Yeah, 180.
All the
is what,
paras
almost
are special ed.
62,000. So all those are, that's a lot of para increases. I don't know if that was explained in your sort of overall summary, and maybe I'm missing something.
So some of the increases, so the different lines you're seeing, Steve, are high school, middle school, and elementary school paras.
Okay.
And I think some of what's going on here is that the 2024 budget maybe didn't include all of the positions that should have been budgeted.
Okay.
And that's why you're seeing some of these increases. As I mentioned, this year's budget is built off of the actual roster and the coding. So that drives some of the increase, and the other part of it is the salary increase that we already talked about.
Okay. And again, I may fully explain it, but boy, it sure looked like in pupil services overall, that was the big area of increases. In the same section, I noticed other placement. I guess is it other placements or out placements? You're budgeting $100,000 drop.
Yes.
It's not much, but that's actually a decrease from the current year expected spending. And I don't know if you're just sort of rounding the numbers off to make it.
In that instance, I rounded the number down.
Yeah. Okay. Because I would expect some sort of inflationary pressure, unless you've already accounted for that in there.
The reason that's down, and that I'll just highlight the lines for the viewing audience. We had budgeted $1.3 million this past year. We were expecting $1.2 million in spend. We actually sat with the pupil services team and we went through the current roster and the expectation of the students that are, as you guys well know, the students roll on and off, and
Sure.
Dr. Jones, feel free to jump in if I'm out of line here. But ultimately, when we weighed all the ins and outs, we felt pretty comfortable adjusting that to $1.2 million for next year. I've got to tell you, I kind of wrung my hands on this one for a long time because this is a line that is so unpredictable. It could change. A family with some high needs children could move in tomorrow, and it would blow this projection out of the water. But you're always balancing that with, you know, if you pad every line conservatively, there's no way you come up with a budget that's just completely untenable.
Well, absolutely, I agree with you. This particular one caught my attention. It was a actual decrease from the budgeted number for the current year, and you know,
and that was intentional, and I think it was. I'm pretty sure I did include it in my comments, because I knew that would be one that would leave people kind of scratching their heads.
And if you go up 4 or 5 lines from that to the pupil services line 190, I think it is.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
So these two items are, if we look at hopefully that switched over. If we go back to the analysis that we went through second, those are the two items that we're talking about. So there's reduced outplacements of 100,000 and tuition offset. What we did was we built in 50% of our expected special ed excess cost.
Okay.
So those two items that I had pulled out here in an effort to answer this question ahead of time.
Okay. I also noticed the health insurance that's going up. I think you said 8%. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
But if I look at some of the particular schools, I see much different numbers, much bigger numbers. I don't know. There's some reallocation or what's going on.
There's a couple things going on there, Steve. It could be teachers coming and going. It could be teachers changing coverage. One thing that you'll see, we also have the 4 positions that are going in, although 2 of them are grant funded. The benefits related to all 4 of them are hitting the benefits line.
Sure.
So
I saw the 30% increase at the high school for that, and 18% I think it is at the elementary school. So that's sort of what caught my
right. Similar, just once again, a little background. It's actually driven off of this. The calculation is driven off of the same spreadsheet that we use to pull the salaries together. Okay. We actually go through the entire payroll roster at the school, the whole district. And we flag whether people have family, single, or single plus dependent coverage or no coverage. So if someone does not use our benefits, we budget 0 for their benefits.
Understand.
And that's once again, I'd put it on the screen, but it's the same spreadsheet that has personal information on it. So, but all of those are coded to the correct account within each of the schools. It's a little different with salaries because all of the benefit dollars hit the BOE budget, with the possible exception of we are increasingly pushing cafeteria benefits over to cafeteria, so those come off of our budget, and that is worked into the model. But some salary dollars do land on grants. But those benefits associated with those people land in the BOE.
Thank you. Those are just sort of things that caught my eye.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions for Bill? From Board of Ed members? Ryan, do you have any questions or?
No, not at this time. I'm pleased with what I hear so far. Once I get the stuff in front of me, I'll be like Steve and dissect it a little bit more. But no, I have nothing at this time.
I can email you if this one and the next copy I get by object code, I'll email it to you before our next meeting.
That'll be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. The Board of Ed members have any questions for Bill or for any of the admin about their departments? No?
Kathleen, as we move along, we'll start to build the presentation so that the board can take a look at it. Probably won't have it next meeting, but after that, we'll probably have the PowerPoint draft for you to take a look at.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. All right, will Bill have a sheet for us with his internal to back up his number in here, his maintenance?
He's coming next month with the other directors.
Okay.
I mean, not next month, next week.
Okay. All right then. So I guess we're done for this evening. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. If I could, Kathleen,
Yes.
just one question, one request to any of the board members. If we talked about the big ticket items earlier, if there are ones in particular that you want to make sure that we hit and define in greater detail, please shoot me an email and I'll make sure that as we work through the definitions, that if there's one, even if it's not a big ticket item, if it's just one that that your gut tells you for one reason or another, people will be more interested in that than other ones, just feel free to shoot me an email and I'll make sure that level of detail gets into the analysis.
Okay, excellent idea. Okay. And that's it, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, do we have citizens' comments
Citizens'
on the agenda?
comments, nope.
Oh, forgot citizens' comments. Any
Yep.
citizens' comments? No? Hearing none? Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, 2 seconds it. Okay, see you next week. We'll be on Monday next week, though.
Good night.